Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FTX Podcast. Really stoked to have here with me today one of the ghouls from Based. Welcome, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Get to get a little bit of insight into this project that I've been fascinated with for a while now. Would you mind kicking us off by kind of giving a little background about what Based is and how it started?
Based is an elastic supply cryptocurrency. It's a fork of the Ample Fourth contracts, and we built it kind of like very rapidly. We have a couple of extra features that we added. For one, we removed the CPI oracle, which is like a consumer price index that Ample Fourth uses, and we fixed the value of Based to 1 SUSD. And the way that we did that is that we have a Uniswap market and a TWAP oracle that basically rebases Based to match 1 SUSD.
Got it. And how did you guys get this started? Like, where was the inspiration from?
So we all kind of came together as a group, and we were going to do it just as a hackathon. But this is like, remember the time that was when it first launched was like this time that Yams was coming out. A lot of these like food tokens were coming out. We really, I would say, in the beginning, didn't expect it to be anything more than just like a quick weekend project.
And like, where did this artistic and aesthetic thing come from? Because I mean, at least personally, other than obviously the technical aspect, I think what really hit off with you guys was how good you were from the aesthetic perspective and like creating a culture around Based. Was that just from you guys? Did you have experience with that from something else?
We had one of the ghouls in particular is a pretty talented artist and had put together some of our design elements with like a heavy vaporwave aesthetic, and from that, like that kind of design, it early attracted so many different artists to come into the Based community, which has really been a huge like boon for Based in the sense that the artists are really interested in kind of like promoting Based, and also many of them are like they have like a different, more interesting value set, I think, than like kind of like traditional degens.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, they're putting tons of time into creating this art to support the project, which means they have like there's I'd say that the really cool thing you guys generated is like you created a community love for it. I don't know if there was a lot of people just really waiting to be able to do this style of art and you guys triggered that, but I just see it where people just genuinely enjoy you guys, which you don't really see in a lot of crypto projects. Like most crypto projects is, oh, how much money can I make? Or, when is this going to 100x? But with you guys, it seems like people are just there for the ride. Is that right?
Yeah, I can definitely think the creation or the design that one of the ghouls put together was kind of like a Cambrian explosion moment for vaporwave aesthetic within like cryptocurrency just more broadly. I mean, I've seen a lot of kind of like duplication of our designs across a bunch of other different projects. Yeah.
And would you mind walking me through the timeline a little bit? Kind of how it started, the different iterations, and what triggered these pivots, and what's happening now and what's happening going forward? Because I'm not aware of that.
Oh yeah, sure. We first started with the launching of Based, which was just as I mentioned the Ample Fourth contracts with removal of kind of like the centralization aspect, where we had kind of like a more decentralized rebasing mechanism. Um, and then we also burn the keys, which is like something Ample Fourth has not done. And in fact, when there was this KuCoin exchange hack, they used their admin control to lock the hacker out of his wallet. So actually, we launched Base V1. Base V1 broke. We did we pulled a parody in that we allowed our init function for the oracle to be called by anyone. And so because they called init, which essentially just broke the contract, it didn't break anything else besides the ability for us to have a TWAP oracle. And so that was actually a pretty big moment, and we kind of designs to try and figure out like how we can like rescue the project in that sense. And then we released V1.5, which essentially you could take your tokens and burn them, and then you get based V1.5. And that one we made sure that our init function for the TWAP oracle was not accessible by anyone. Okay, so then after that, we announced Based Swap that we were going to move on to do a project called Based Swap. And this is like, mind you, this is like Sushi Swap has only been out for, I don't know, a couple of weeks at this point. Sake Swap is yet to be seen. There were no other like Uniswap forks besides Sushi Swap. And we weren't intending to do a Uniswap fork. We were intending to fork other code and make a more interesting application, just like we did with Base. And to do that, we realized that if you do a fair launch like Base was a fair launch where we had allowed only yield farming as a distribution mechanism. There was no pre-mine, there was no venture involved. It was just very quick and dirty fair launch. One of the problems that you actually have with fair launches is that if you want to do any kind of like follow-on development, it's basically impossible because you've tied your hands in a sense that it would have to be like kind of a 100% volunteer full-time job for a couple of people to do follow-on development. So we never expected that kind of support that we got, but we somehow we found a unique niche in this market, and what we wound up doing was we created these debt obligations called the degens. That's the symbol is DEGEN, which is an NFT as a debt obligation, and we were using that to allow us to employ ourselves to while we work on Based Swap. The degens, we made 10 of them, and we sold them for 50,000 SUSD, and then what that essentially entitles them to is a repayment from the developer fund when Based Swap launches. So money that comes from fees that would go to the development fund would then go to the degens until they're repaid. Yeah, so there were these, like, we got one of the ghouls to make these really kick-ass NFTs, and those NFTs were kind of our way of making debt obligations to finance the future development of Base. So in the meantime, we were kind of all over the place. We talked with a couple of people and worked up a design for Moonbase, and Moonbase is an abstraction on the yield farming concept. So if you think of yield farming in the sense that you yield farming does two things, right? It like the first thing it does is it has kind of a Sybil defense, which is why you kind of have to stake an amount, right? And then your payment and your pool is proportional to the amount that you've staked. Mm-hmm. And then the second element is that it kind of like distributes the tokens in a way that allows them to kind of like enter the public, right? The Fed has the way that they do it, and the Fed basically lends the money to get it into the system, but in fair launch mechanisms, they essentially distribute it for stakers. And Moonbase is an abstraction on that, and the way that it works is like essentially a fair launch project will create a rover, and they'll put some of those tokens into the rover, and there's essentially a 1-year vesting period in which those tokens will then be slowly sold and returned to Moonbase, which is where people stake their base over a 1-year vesting period. And we can make modifications to the vesting period and such, which we have. So the idea is like it sounds really weird on the surface, but if you think about the way yield farming works, it makes a lot of sense in the sense that like there's no real reason that you distribute those tokens to people who already have some sort of other token, right? It's just some mechanism that makes it difficult, or some mechanism that gives you kind of a civil defense. And then I think in Moonbase we have a similar design, but also unlike yield farmers who are going to farm your token and then dump it, we have this 1-year vesting period that kind of requires us to hold the token. And since we have a very talented collective, you also create alignment with a collective that is interested in the success of your project and interested in the kind of the dissemination of information into the crypto community about your project. So it's essentially like a really abstract an abstraction on yield farming with a little bit of a PR mechanism.
Yeah, that was my understanding, or at least from when I read through it. Like the coolest thing I thought was it allows these new projects to basically have it so that the based community has some buy-in and cares about them to sort of put out that artwork and put out the word and the memes. I mean, the based community has the best memes, that's for sure. I think the based community kind of revolutionized the memes that everyone else is doing. Like Rope wouldn't become where it is if it hadn't been for based, is my theory, or meme or any of these other ones.
Yeah. Well, we really are grateful for the community that we have, and I think that just we never expected it to be like this. The expectation was that, I think one thing that you said early, like among the ghouls, was like kind of we're catching lightning in a bottle, and so we had to kind of like that's when we kind of decided to do follow-on projects. Then the kind of last major one was Moonbase. We did do one other thing. We made a set of Moonbase cards, or Moonbase the card game, which is an NFT based card game, and we airdropped them to anybody who was staking in Moonbase.
Oh, really? I might have one.
Oh yeah, if you're staked in Moonbase, then you have Moonbase NFTs. Just go to moon.base.money, and you'll see a little icon pop up in the top left, and you can just redeem your cards. It's slightly gas heavy, so you might want to do it, sometime like nights and weekends.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sweet! I'll check that out.
So there's a decent set of cards there. And we used a pseudo-random distribution mechanism that's like not super random, but it was just, to give it to our homies.
Yeah, I feel that. And are you guys still working on Base Swap then? Is that kind of the vision? Like, or what's going on with the project right now? Where are you guys at? What are you doing?
I'm so glad you asked. So we've actually put Base Swap on hold, and we started working on Based Loans. Based Loans is a fork from Compound, and essentially what it is it's going to be a leverage mechanism for new projects, so that new tokens that come out, you can leverage against those, rather than where Compound is only kind of like these high quality, highly liquid assets. We allow you to do it on new assets. And there are some changes that we've made to make that a better experience.
Oh, nice. That's exciting. Would you mind going a little bit more into the mechanics? So like, let me see. You can lend your newer tokens and receive some funds. How does it work exactly?
You essentially like have the two basically you have your shit coins, and then you have your high quality, highly liquid assets like Ether and USDC, and you lend those to borrow borrow on shitcoins. And you're able to borrow up to 20% of your OA.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm not like. Let's also like put this here as a caveat. Is like I'm not the economics person on this. I'm kind of a developer, kind of a so I have a little bit of understanding about how it works, and then how I'm going to wire it up to the interface are like smart contracts developers and economists know better than me about that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense to me. I mean, you got to give these small shitcoins some love, right? It's really hard for them to get off the ground in some senses, and I think this will be a support net for that.
Right, totally, and like yeah. So I think that's going to be a great project, and a few days TM we'll have launch, and there's also, we're still going to build base swap. That's what we borrowed the money from the degens for, and that's what we intend to do. But there was a hard time in the middle there that we had to kind of like decide what we wanted to do, and the tail on base swap is just so long. Especially if you want to launch something that's not just a Uniswap fork, because who wants that again? It's pretty boring at this point. And so we were like, okay, well, the base loans tail is much shorter, and we can kind of get that out into the market. And that's the innovation here for like not just us, but just broadly, like is fast moving, nimble, open organizations. I think you'll see kind of like a similar like implementation from YFI. You'll see something like that from SushiSwap, and you'll see something like that from Base, which is there's kind of a I'd say like people can choose to ignore this or not, but there's a revolution happening in this like anonymous, fast-moving open work, and it's not just forking. It's not just forking of someone else's code. It's like forking, iterating, improving, releasing. Right, like the traditional app development path is basically like this. It's like you have an idea, you maybe write a minor implementation, you go raise a bunch of VC, and then you go to you finish your implementation, you do a really expensive contract audit, you release, and then at some point, you will kind of like turn that into a business. Maybe you keep raising, who knows? But kind of like in this I don't know what to call it, like Anon fair launch open work space. What they're doing is they're kind of like launching a product very rapidly to kind of like penetrate into this crypto zeitgeist, and then using that as an organizational mechanism to build out more stuff and more rapidly. And I don't want to bag on smart contract audits, but they mostly suck. Like they're really expensive, and then what you get out of it is like dubious, right? Like it's a very expensive code audit or a very expensive code review. It's like, why don't you just do a very thorough code review with some friends?
Yeah, totally. I mean, then you see these cases of these guys that have 3 audits from the quote unquote biggest firms, and then I'm not going to name names, but then you get hacked a second time after they audit everything. It's like, fuck.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense, right? Like if you think about it that way, it's like this is like, okay, so part of that is like is social, right? And part of that is like liability, right? So the venture kind of like comes in and is like, hey, if you are, if you're going to launch, we want to see an audit, and we need somebody else to mark the checkbox on there, so kind of like we have done our due diligence and are released from kind of like the damage that is going to be done here. But yeah, like we mentioned, it's like they're just not that secure and they're not that good. Generally, I'm not saying all auditing firms are like that. It's just sometimes, you know, I think it's like if your project isn't as important like Base is, you know, it just a thorough code review from friends who really knows Solidity really well is just as good.
Yeah, no, and I actually really like, so, you know, I know Anon developers have been getting a lot of flack just because of all the hacks and all the different things that have been happening. But at the same time, something I don't think people realize, well, two things. One is that if we want this space to keep moving forward as fast as it's been, we need guys like you guys that are out there breaking shit and moving as fast as possible. Because if we slow down enough, we're gonna get caught up by people that would be very happy to slow down the entire space. So from one sense, I really like that. And in the second sense is like, realistically, people should be aware that we're in funny money land, and that if they put money into a smart protocol, or, you know, a smart contract into some protocol on the web, that it's their decision. You know, it's like it's a black hole in some senses, and they need to take liability for that and responsibility. And not to get too philosophical here, but I think like the abstraction of everyone blaming the developers of these protocols goes back to the sense where people nowadays, in my perception, don't really like to take responsibility for things. It's much easier to blame others or be a victim in that sense.
Yeah. So like from my perspective, you know, there are a lot of these contracts were getting really good audited versions of the contracts that are kind of like getting iterated on. Like for example, like the staking rewards contracts are like there's like relatively low risk in those, and as long as you don't make any like major changes to them, there's just relatively low risk in those. Um, but then but then, you know, like, okay, so for base V1, right, it's like it totally broke. What are you going to do? Well, the value of base is not in a token. The value of base is in like who's organizing around it, right? And so if you think of it that way, it's like, well, base V1.5 was like, you know, a given because those people weren't going to go, oh well, you know, my base is gone forever. Well, no, it's like the community is what's powerful, and that's what kind of like makes things valuable is people's desire to have them. And so creating a base V1.5 was relatively straightforward for us. And we said, okay, all the people who have base V1, just deposit it here and get your base V1.5. Now
Yeah,
things get more serious when you have assets that are outside of your control. Like if you lock a contract with like USDC or like in the case of YAM where they were like they were trading whatever pair they were trading against, the pool got drained like almost immediately. But like in most cases, it's pretty innocent.
yeah, I agree. I mean, I just transferred my tokens over to V1.5 and I didn't really think a second thought about it. Because, you know, like I think the baseline for you guys is you captured people's imaginations because you kind of grabbed this retro thing that I think a lot of people really enjoy and grew up on, and, you know, Back to the Future vibes, and then you put it into this crypto land, which is the future. So I think it's a really good amalgamation of many different elements. Because I know some really big players in the space that are fascinated with you guys. So it's not like, I don't know. It's I think your guys' creativity and imagination made a lot of other people just believe in whatever you guys are building. So whatever comes out, that support exists as long as stuff keeps coming out. You know, I mean, I think people obviously will like, if nothing happens for a long period of time, they're like, okay, well, nothing happened here. But if you guys keep iterating and keep pushing forward, I don't really see how you'll end up without success. I think you guys have a pretty good platform to launch from at the moment.
Wow, thanks. That's a huge compliment. Yeah, we're really grateful for all the people who are interested and care about base. This really seems surreal for many of us on our team who have, you know, some of us have worked on projects before and just, you know, never captured this level of interest. Yeah, so yeah, then we're just going to keep moving. Base clones is next, and then following that we'll be doing base swap. And we have like kind of like a million, I'd say like different projects in the backlog. One of them is like actually taking this Moonbase the card game, and turning it into an actual game, which we kind of like the community is leading an effort towards that.
Yeah, that
And
would be sick. That would be super sick. Or like an art marketplace where like a quote unquote Fiverr where people could come in with Based and have some of these talented artists create stuff for them or for their projects. Or um, I mean, I think a lot of
that's
people would
pretty
love
rad.
to be able to tap into just the well of creativity that's going on in the community. So if anything that you guys can do that open that up more, I think could be a positive.
Oh, that's funny that you say that because they're working, like there's kind of like talk, but no like kind of bandwidth from anybody right now about this idea of the Based Collective, and that's what like most of our artists associate themselves under. Is they call it the Based Collective, which is essentially an art collective, and they kind of want to make a cryptographic version of that. Uh, like maybe some smart contracts allowing them to curate their own art. And if there's anybody out there that wants to come help, because we're like super strapped for development and time, we'd love to have you help us with the Based Collective.
But you hear that, folks? Go help these guys out if you have artistic dev capacity. I mean, is that kind of the baseline of what you're looking for? Or are you guys also looking for people just in general to help? Are there other, I don't know, BD kind of stuff as well that people can help with?
Yeah, like if like there are people in the base community who help with the launching of rovers for Moonbase, and kind of like they'll go and help us like find the projects that are just launching and like help us to kind of like show to these projects like what is what's possible, what kind of assistance we can give them, and why it's beneficial for them to launch a rover. We do have people who do that. Um, but yeah, no, like we have like I'd say like a lot of hands in general right now.
And it also seems like, I mean, you will be launching into a really upside market cycle right now, and there's going to be a lot to capture from that. So, that's a blessing for you guys as well, because how many projects failed, not because they weren't good, but just because they launched in a bear market.
Oh yeah, so many. I was talking to somebody like just a few days ago, and they were telling me about how they essentially were building they were building essentially what they were building libraries, on-chain libraries for contracts that were like basically audited and that you could just reference. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I wish that would launch and stuff. Yeah, me too. We did it. We did it in the middle of kind of like in 2018, late 2019 or early 2019. So like their project never got off the ground because um, everybody thought Ethereum was over in January of 2019 when we hit 60 something dollars on
Yeah,
Coinbase. So
I remember. Oh man.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
crazy how timing is everything in every industry. Well, just in life in general. Like how much
Yeah,
everything aligns
totally.
with stuff.
Yeah, that's part of basic success really is like the timing was absolutely perfect. Like it came in, I mean, like if you think about it on the surface, like a rebasing token, right? Like, Ample Fourth at that point had been out for what, like a year. Um and kind of like this is like right like I think we were like 1 day or 2 days after Yam's launch. It was pretty pretty close to that time, and I remember during this same time, like there were farms cropping up like every 5 minutes. I know because I also farmed them too. But it was like kind of like YFI did the first, and then it was just like this huge explosion in the space of like a bunch of fair launch projects. Not all is like legitimate and like well, uh, you know, well researched as YFI. But some of them survived, and some of them are going to go do cool stuff still, which I think is great. And Base just happened to fit in. We just like kind of like we just barely slid in, under the bar, and they let us in the door. So like now we're just going to keep building shit until like our arms fall off.
That's great. I'm glad it's working. I mean, I know right now everything's a little bit slow again, but I think as the loan system, base loans come out, it's gonna pick up again. You know, a really cool project that may be good to see kind of the economics from and see if there's anything that could be incorporated with you guys is, have you checked out Empty Set Dollar? ESD?
I have heard of it. Actually, like I remember what was Scott Lewis's tweet about it? It's like, I think this is all gonna go parabolic or something. And then Nick Johnson asked him for a commit hash, and then after Empty Set Dollar crashed, he like did a reveal on the on his hash.
That's funny. I definitely think it's worth taking a look at. As like, dude, Ampleforth is back to 300 something million market cap, and as you said, they still hold the admin keys. Like, it's a centralized project in a lot of senses. So I think that there's a lot of space still for guys like you guys or ESD to grow in that space. I mean, because at the end of the day, right, like the real use case of these coins is if the market cap is huge, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, so Base like just is traditionally not focused on that. Yes, we like attracted a lot of people because of that. But in general, we try to like not like focus on the price. What was it, Empty Set Dollar? I just remember like really early on, Ampleforth. Okay, so they're like with regard to their admin keys, like I don't want to bash on other projects because like people make design decisions for different reasons, right? Like, wouldn't it be great if we had admin keys and we didn't have to go to base to be 1.5? But like kind of our like ethos is all wrapped up in kind of like as quickly as possible burning admin keys. Like kind of like validating the contracts as they are deployed, making sure that like in some instances we want to validate that the oracles are working correctly, and kind of like everything that's functioning, and then like slowly we'll burn each of the admin keys. So like essentially like nobody has control of base except for the base holders, right? And it's all just rebasing off this Uniswap market. Which is also great from a maintenance perspective because we don't have to do anything.
That's true. You know, something else I wanted to ask you about was like some of these funny community moments that I've been seeing. So like when Sobi spread the FUD about the hack or whatever, and the price dumped, I don't know, 60% in a few hours. What were you guys thinking? Just what was your guys' thought process with that?
Oh, I was thinking, holy shit. I was like, we were freaked out. But just because telegrams are just like Telegram is like captures that kind of that fear energy when the market's crashing, and lots of people start DMing you like weird stuff, like why is the price crashing? Like, dude, I don't know, and but like Sovi's actually still a community member. We love him very much, and we think that moment was actually pretty hilarious because it really like one of the things that we say on our domain is like we say designed to shake out weekends, right? And it's like making the price crash 60% before partial rebound is like no, I actually fully rebounded.
Yeah, fully did.
It's like like shakes out a lot of weekends, and kind of like it's like our community members are really cool that way, and they're like I don't care, I'm not selling, kind of like the Chainlink community or the Bitcoin community, like they're never selling. Like everything's a manipulation to get you separated from your base or something.
Yeah, PsyOp Supreme. You know someone in the community that I would highly recommend you guys leveraging as well, who was really I think he's still following, but was really fascinated. Have you seen Matt K?
Matt K. Yes, I am familiar. Tell me more what you're thinking.
He runs Blockhead Capital, his proprietary firm. The dude is just brilliant, and he really loved what you guys were doing. So just as a heads up, like I think he'd be happy to always have ideas bounced off him and stuff, and he's very, very smart.
Cool. Yeah, I'll talk to him. the other person, we have like a bunch of like I'd say like crazy characters in our community. One of them's and like before I left I'm doing based more I'd say like more seriously, more professionally. And there's a guy that I have to interact with whose name is Mr. Bones. It's like the future is a very weird place. But Mr. Bones is like really talented artist, developer in our community, and he's created this like sharing the same feeling as the bass community created a radio station called WeBass.radio. And if you go there and you listen, it's like songs that are kind of like very mellow, but electronic mostly.
Like lo-fi? I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, totally. And the funny thing is like it's like that's another thing that kind of came from the way that it was launched, in that Bass.money had this lo-fi track on the main page, and you could listen to it and while you were scrolling through.
What about the music
so
videos? Like, where does that inspo come from?
Oh yeah. So that's one of the ghouls who's like does video art. And they're really talented with regard to video art. And it's just, I mean, it's high, it's like top notch stuff. And then that also brought in more video artists into the community who also do video art. There was one today that came out. It was basically this JG Wentworth commercial that is 877 cash now, and they made it into a base loans commercial. It's really high quality. Let me send you a link actually.
Okay, check it out.
It says 877 base now, and like it really looks like, I mean, it really looks like it's the original commercial, and the audio matches and everything.
Yeah, they're great, dude. The spooky party one. I really enjoyed that one too.
Oh yeah, that one was good. Like it was like the Bass Community Telegram, the movie or whatever.
Yeah, yep. And it was saying that, naming everyone, shit. It's good stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we just have like we really do have one of the best communities in my opinion. And like it reminds me of kind of like the Dogecoin Reddit in like 2014, and then it's like a really friendly, interesting place. Oh hey, I just saw that we got like we didn't get listed, but our price feed is now available on Coinbase, which is pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah.
What? That's awesome.
Someone just sent it to me. I'll share that with you as well.
Yeah, send it. And then when I do launch this, I'll just put all the interesting links in the description so people can check out the different stuff.
Yeah, sure. And like the funny thing about this is like I never expected anything to happen. I think many people or many of our the creators of Bass never expected anything like this to happen. We kind of went into it blind, and then when you start seeing the dumb Bass logo that you made in half an hour to make it look like the Internet Explorer logo, but as a bee. You start seeing it pop up other places. Like we saw it pop up on CoinGecko, then you see it pop up on Zapper, or then Zorion. I hope I'm saying that right. You start seeing it pop up, and you're like, guys, what's going on?
I made that. Hey, I made that.
Yeah, it's pretty surreal, I think. And we've just been really blessed in that way.
Oh, what was the deal with Based Classic?
So people who, yeah, this is another thing about Based, is like there's a whole like mythos. I mean, like from the day zero of Based to now, there's just like this whole like other level of mythos. So Based Classic was people who didn't convert their Based to Based v1.5. And therefore never received rebases. So the best they could ever do is converting at the rebase value. So that would be like like one Based v1, you would get basically $1. And then kind of a couple of like iconoclasts in our community like just didn't want to like some of them like didn't convert, some of them did but bought later, and then there was created like a whole secondary market for the Based v1, which is the ultra hype beast token, because it was never intended to be used, is like super limited in supply. I forget how many there are. I think there's less than 1,000 Based classics. At one point, the market had traded up to like 5,000 SUSD per Based classic. Yeah, it's just like, and so then they formed a like collab bot group on Telegram that you had to have one Based classic to get into, which is like I'm sure other cryptos do this, but like this one is like, it was like at the time was pretty elite because it's like it's a country club for like degens, like it's $5,000 to get in the door or whatever. But yeah, so that created like this whole secondary market, and yeah, like everything has like a little bit behind it. Like like one of our favorite moments is like Riff Raff, the rapper, just dropped us a track. He wrote like a 2-verse song mentioning Based and some elements of Moonbase, and that was pretty cool. We kind of weren't expecting that. There were other kind of like high-profile community members. So yeah, it's like things just kind of like keep happening inside the community.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you guys. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was saying, I'm telling you, you guys are sparking people's imagination. So keep biting people so you can grow the graveyard, because we want to see where it can all go.
Yeah, one that happened early on was this. We have like kind of a patron saint called Dustin Rawl, and it was a guy who showed up in our Telegram and was like, "Hey, I just I forget how much it was. I think it was 50 ETH. I want to say it was 50 ETH on spent on like 2 Based. And this was after I can't remember if this was before or after rebasing mechanism was turned on. So it was like a really, really small amount. He had traded into Uniswap, turned off the price impact settings, and had traded like, I want to say it was 50. It may have been less. Anyway, it was a huge amount of ETH. That like, and so now he's like a patron saint of Based. People talk about Dustin Rawl, and they'll like reference him in their in their artwork and in some of their like videos. In fact, Based Classic, which is Based v1, says Based Classic Rawl's Vision. It's like the full name the community members gave it.
Yeah, I saw it was the password.
Doing something.
It was a password for the landing page at one moment too.
Yeah, when we did when we announced Based Swap, I think that was the or maybe it was Moonbase. I can't remember which one. But yeah, like, and then we're also like always abusing Cameo, because like Cameo, you're not supposed to. Are you familiar with Cameo?
No, what is? Actually, what is Cameo?
So Cameo is like this website where you can get celebrities to like greet your your loved ones or something, tell them a happy birthday. So I can go and get some kind of D-list actor from 1995 to do something or say something like congratulations, and there's just a whole bunch of actors and actresses on the site, politicians even, Corey Lewandowski was making videos at one point.
Gotta make that money.
Yeah, right. Stacking that paper. Yeah, so we go on Cameo, and the first one we got, we're totally abusing the system. No offense, I don't mean to hurt anybody, but it's just fun. We'll write a script for them to read, and they'll read the script, and it's always just funny, meme-ish, bullshit about bass. For the first one that we had do that was Riff Raff, the rapper, and I think that's probably why he dropped a track. I don't really know why. I know that we had somebody in our community who was in contact with them, but anyway, it was really cool. Yeah, we did a couple of those, but yeah, it's a really fun thing to do. If you ever want to, just if you have 25, even Pomp does cameos.
Really?
Although,
That's funny.
yeah, hey, Pomp, if you're out there, dude, I submitted a script to you, dude, and you didn't do it, and it just timed out. What's the deal, man?
What's up with that, Pomp? What's up with that?
Yeah.
We'll have to see if he listens. I don't think he listens to my podcast, but you never know.
Yeah, he's probably somewhere eating Dominoes, dude.
So cool. My last question for you, dude. What's a message you would leave to artists and devs and people to come and join the effort?
Oh, yes. Well, just generally, I say thank you for all the work that you put in so far. Just the Ghouls are incredibly grateful for that, and just broadly the interest that has been exhibited in bass, because we really never expected it to be anything but fun, and it has been really fucking fun. So thank you, and come hang out with us, and if you want to do something, that's cool too.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Tristan.